Hi, pre-vets. Welcome to today's interview with two of your current national officers, myself, McCaelyn Beuschel, webmaster, and Gretel Wurdack, president. Today, we'll be sharing stories, tips, and insights from the front lines of preparing for veterinary school. I'm McCaelyn, and I'm a senior at Auburn University majoring in animal science, pre-vet. Gretel, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Gretel. I'm a senior at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, and I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. Okay, so we can just go ahead and get right into it. So, obviously, everything that we discuss is going to be somewhat generalized so that it will relate to the audience a little bit more. But these are all hopeful and nothing set in stone. You can always change your, wants, dreams, desires halfway through veterinary school. So, with that being said, right now, what would you like to specialize in and why?
Right now, I really like not being able to turn down an animal in need. So going in with a pretty broad perspective is going to be my greatest thing that I'm looking forward to. Well, small animal, I do like. I'm not as passionate about it as I am with equine medicine, but I've fallen in love with everything I've ever done. So I mainly started in equine physiology and small animal medicine. And then I started doing more lameness work, which I really loved for horses. And then last year I started going out of the box and I started working on falcons and hawks with the World Bird Sanctuary in St. Louis in their hospital. And I found out that I really like that too. So I think being able to help in everything that needs a little bit of work, I don't want to turn anyone away.
Yeah, and I'd say I'm kind of in the same boat. Growing up in a rural area, you're kind of required to be mixed animal, and that's what I plan to do, hopefully one day, and have a mobile clinic and kind of be able to service a wider area, maybe partner up with a couple different veterinarians and reduce that workload by sharing the on-call hours, etc. But yeah, I'd say my heart lies in production animal medicine, but I'm the same way. I would never turn an animal down. So you mentioned you got your start in equine theriogenology. And to follow that up, I got my start, I would say my first experiences were growing up on a horse ranch. So we were similar in that. And then I volunteered with my local mixed animal vet practice. And on that same line, what has been the hardest part of your pre-vet journey and why?
I'd say when you're confronted with things that you don't know and you are expected to know, even though you're an undergrad. Working for veterinarians, a lot of the times, especially in universities, they can forget what level your knowledge is compared to theirs. So when you are working for them and you're expected to be like a veterinary student, that's incredibly challenging and it makes you feel like you're not worth as much. I think that's a really big theme across a lot of undergrads who are working for veterinarians or in vet clinics or trying to get a job in a clinic as they're not seen as valued. But you just being there, a part of the journey, is part of the schooling itself, and you will learn. So that's been the hardest part.
I would agree with that. That's a good outlook on it. But when I think about when I first started at my university job and Auburn's an R1 institution, it's like, oh, everybody's doing research, everybody's in these really high profile kind of career niches. And I felt very out of place as somebody who had only worked with a general mixed animal practice. But the thing is, everybody there was once in your same position, and they are so willing to take you under their wing and help you out and help you learn no matter what you're doing. I can't express the gratitude I have for the people that I've been able to work with. I would say my hardest part of my pre-vet journey is probably the uncertainty because it feels like you're putting in all this work and kind of a sunk cost fallacy. You think about switching majors and you're like, well, no, I don't really want to put all of this to waste. And just not knowing if all of this work is going to add up to anything and if you're going to get in. And even throughout the admissions process, that application opens in January. And it's December now, and I'm barely hearing back about interviews, acceptance
Yeah.
denials,
Barely.
and that makes it really hard because you're uh almost all pre-vets are type A and you're like, oh, I want to plan where I'm going to be next year. I want to plan, my Christmas list based on what school I'm going to get into. And you just can't do that. It's very uncertain territory for sure. So what is your favorite part of your pre-vet journey?
My favorite part I would say is that in high school, I loved school, right? But a lot of the things were pretty boring for me. As much as I'll make it through chemistry and biology, being able to be a pre-vet student at my university that has a veterinary school and an animal science program, finally being able to study what I want to study and seeing how physiology works, seeing how you can help with food security across the world, bringing technology and genetics to other places, truly falling in love with learning, which I didn't feel in high school, has been my very favorite part of being a pre-vet student and why I want to continue my education. I think I would feel very frustrated in life if I didn't have any more schooling. There has to be more than what we know. There's so much more.
I agree. I think it's crazy that people in the UK graduate high school and go straight into vet school for just 5 years in the
Oh,
same kind of fashion that we do 8 years. I know that their high schools are a little bit more academically rigorous and whatnot, but it just seems crazy that 5 years is all it adds up to. And I think that that's really right. Going through freshman year, chemistry and, biology wasn't as hard, but
yeah.
all of those challenging gen ed courses that feels like, oh, like I'm not studying what I want to study. I don't know if this has anything to do with what I'm going to do in the future. All I can say about that is that when you get to your major classes, like you get that feeling and you're like, this is where I want to be. And you do better in those classes and you love going to class and you love doing the homework for it. I was just talking to my friends about my animal breeding class, how even though I ended up getting a B in it, it was one of my favorite classes I've taken at Auburn because it was what I'm interested in. So, other than the educational aspect of your pre-vet journey, what was, some of your highlights of the vet clinic experience aspect of it?
Well, I got to adopt one of the horses of a research study that I worked on. She actually lives with me. I just hauled them home, so they're in my backyard pasture. That's been really fulfilling. Another part is just I've never had the opportunity to work with ruminants before, so cattle and sheep. I found that I have a very large love for sheep and goats.
Yeah,
And
I did that too. I was so excited when my parents finally let me get a goat my junior year of high school. Like, I can't even describe the experience of working with a new animal. I got to work with a kangaroo this last week. I've worked with a lion. Like, that really fuels your love for learning again, but not just in the educational world, being able to apply that education.
and also realizing what gaps there are in the veterinary industry. There's a lot of prejudice against holistic medicine, and I've read a lot into it because I've had a horse who struggles with osteoarthritis. And so we met a barrier where traditional medicine couldn't do anything more for him. It was more so waiting for time to heal. And then holistic medicine approaches like trimming for correction, reframe his body, different like glue on shoes, body work, chiropractic work. So being able to bring that into veterinary medicine is one of my things I'm looking forward to the most. And talking about gaps in the pre-vet field too, making sure that students have access to talk to veterinarians because you're going to have one or two letters from a vet and you're going to want to know what the field looks like. That's a really big issue for a lot of students. Having a pre-vet club, I've met a lot of students from schools who don't have a vet school and their pre-vet club's like 10 people versus the University of Illinois. I'm the president of ours and we have around 300 active members. So like the opportunities that are available are very different and making sure that everyone sees different areas of the industry. And then my last point is adding a lot of community service into the vet field. Yeah, like low cost days with high volume. A lot of vets can work in 1 day a week of that, and you have the same revenue. You just help so many more people in need and animals. Low cost spay and neuter. Just there are so many amazing things that I've gotten to experience.
Yeah, I think that those are some really interesting points. It makes me wonder if there's a future for vet med that has something similar to a doctor of osteopathic medicine, the whole body kind of aspect or outlook on medicine. I think that overall, I relate to that, getting different experiences and being able to expose other people, kind of the outlook, or I'm sorry, outreach mission of vet med is really important, especially as somebody from a small town where, people grow up and they say, oh, I want to be a vet. Nobody gives us the resources to say, here's what it takes to get into undergrad, let alone vet school, let alone get us in contact with a vet. It felt very lonely going through all that and figuring all that out as, the first person in my family to go in anything vet med. So
Mhm.
I think that there could be more, whether it's online or workshops, or I'm not sure how to go about it, but we could definitely do better on the outreach.
I
Uh,
definitely think so. Being in high school, I was one of maybe two girls out of the entire high school who was going towards veterinary medicine. I'm not sure if the other girl's still continuing it. I hope she is. So my counselor didn't even know about an 8-year program that Missouri has where you can get in from high school. So I could have had that entire burden of freaking out the last 4 years relieved. But I have learned a lot in my time in undergrad and I worked so hard. So I am almost grateful for that stress because it makes you grow. Having more programs, I think, for high school students who are interested and really taking them seriously at the time. It's okay if they change their mind, but there are a million little girls who start out, oh, I want to be a vet when I grow up. Why can't we continue that? Why does it change?
yeah, I've seen so many people drop vet med completely after freshman year chemistry or OChem 1. And it's really sad because we might not have guaranteed admission at Auburn or, your college, but I don't think that's a reason to give up. I wish that I had known about Missouri, and I know Mississippi State does something similar where if you are accepted in high school, you just have to, it's a conditional acceptance, but it's
Thank
very doable.
you.
That
Mhm.
would have been great to know. I would have looked into that. I just don't think that many colleges advertise that or that high schools have the capabilities to, they can't know everything about it, especially if there's such a small subset of the students that are interested in it. For example, I think I'm the only person within at least a 5 year span to go into vet med in my high school.
Oh, yeah.
The classes
Mhm.
are 40 people, I know everybody. I can't name a single person that went to college for vet med. I know a couple vet techs, but that's it. And so that gets really frustrating not having that community. And therefore, you can't have a pre-vet club in your high school. Those just aren't options. You can start
No.
in to put it on your resume, but there's nobody in it. But I think that my favorite part about my pre-vet journey has been able to inspire and encourage people in similar positions to what I was in high school, or even just in their freshman year of college and say, like, you can do it. If I felt like if I can do it, anybody can do it. I'm very blessed to have a family that helps me with just about everything that they can. But overall, they didn't know anything about applying to college in a modern day and age. I'm the oldest in my family. So even from that aspect, it felt lonely being one of the only people in my class that applied somewhere out of state. There
Oh,
was no resources. And that gets really frustrating. So I can kind of understand from that standpoint, we need more resources, whether we put it on the APVMA website or I just don't know how to get it to those students. Because if you go to Mississippi State's website, I'm sure you can find anything about their early admittance program, but how are those students going to know about it without researching it?
oh yeah. I'm working with counselors is hard because they also switch a lot, but certain efforts like that we can make more on our APVMA side. If anyone knows of a big need in their high school, they should reach out to us and we're welcome to talk to them. It's been really great being at a university with a vet school because I finally felt like I found my community of people who understood why, I was the kid. We would go to a family party and I would sit with the dogs, or the cats. I'm sure we all relate to that. And people who grew up exactly thinking like that, and they sit and they study with me for hours, and we all have that same mentality. And it's not like a suffering together. It's we're excited for the future. This is the work that it takes. And hopefully we can help high schoolers with that too.
Looking back on your pre-vet journey, what were some classes that were very difficult for you? What were your favorite classes? Just your educational journey.
say the hardest classes for me, probably general chemistry. Um, I did like organic chemistry more because I'm very much a visual learner. And when I was taking general chemistry, it was 2021, right after the pandemic, and everything was online. And so were all the help sessions. So it would take hours for me to get a 10-minute answer waiting on the Zoom. And also, learning online is not for me. It does not go well. I had a very challenging instructor. And if anyone knows anything about chemistry at the University of Illinois, the program is one of the top in the country. So it really hurt. Exactly. I know it's not a favorite for anyone. And my favorite classes, I would say, would be equine science at University of Illinois. My professor and I are actually really good friends now. I was taking her class and I got stuck at a park with my horse who wouldn't load in the trailer. And we were an hour off campus and my professor happened to be there and saved the day. Got him in. Like, it was getting dark. I was worried.
I love that. I've been there a couple times with my parents. That's not a fun situation. I would say that chemistry, OChem, all of it, anything in that chemistry department, biochem, all of it,
Mhm.
feels like the downfall of every pre-vet student. There is
Mhm.
not one person that is applying to vet school right now, or even that is a freshman in college, that doesn't relate to that statement. Everybody has a hard time in chem. There's very few people that don't. And if they say they don't, then maybe they just have a better mind for it. They just have use a different part of their brain, whatnot.
Exactly. My dad is a chemist, an organic chemist, and I every day am like, I did not get that part of my brain. But I can do anatomy. I can see the muscles and the bones move in my head. I'm not grossed out by anything at all, and he can't do that. So we all have our own talents. For my equine class, changed my life because I was taught very traditional how to manage horses growing up, like stalling them all the time. And then my equine class completely rerouted my brain for welfare standards. Like, them being outside is actually the best thing for them, for their movement, for their hooves, for their breathing, for their lungs, for their mental state, adjusting how I fed them. And then I got to do this with my own horses in practice. So that completely changed how I would educate the public too, is seeing the old world versus the new world with lots of research behind it. So that was my favorite class because it really changed my whole life. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point. I remember in my last interview with the LMU director of admissions, she mentioned that they teach all vet students the old school, not as new equipment way and the new state-of-the-art way. I thought that was so unique. I haven't heard somebody say that. It's either, oh, we have state-of-the-art instruments and you're going to learn the best of the best, or they just don't address it. So I thought that was a really cool aspect.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, I would say my favorite class, honestly, is really between animal breeding or reproductive physiology, which sounds a little cliche. Everybody's like, oh, I want to go into theory, I want to go into breeding, whatnot. I don't think I even necessarily have a career interest in that. I just think those were such cool classes, and it was kind of the first exposure you got into production. It was
Right.
animal breeding was like applied genetics. It's like, how do you use these concepts and make the best herd that you possibly can, whether it's cattle, horses, whatever it might be, and reaching those genetic goals. And then reproductive physiology was learning all of the anatomy and physiology behind that. And both of them were so cool. It really piqued my interest. My least favorite, that's really hard, but I think I'm going to be generic and say Chem 2. It really took me out,
Me,
but a W is not the end of the world. And I can say that after being accepted to vet school, a W on your transcript from Chem 2 is okay.
it's not the end of the world. Chemistry was not my best class either, and I've also gotten accepted into vet school. So I think admissions understands.
No, exactly. And they see it all the time. There's nothing to worry about. I remember feeling like, I'd never get into vet school whenever I was said drop Chem 2. I dropped it on the last possible day to drop, which was also an exam day. And I just knew that that wasn't going to recover. So I dropped the class and I don't regret it. And You know, I think people freak out. I see people post in our APVMA group on Facebook all the time. I just got a C minus or I just got a B minus in XYZ class. Are they going to look at this poorly? No. If
They'll survive. As long as the majority of your grades are A's, close to A's, you maintain a competitive GPA. Like I know the norm is a 3.5 and above. That's pretty competitive. You're in the gold. You are fine. And I don't want people to think that they have to be perfect. Like 4.0 students get rejected if they don't have experience. Like everything is a trade-off. And you're not going to be perfect as a doctor. No one is. Have you met a fourth year vet student? They're scared out of their mind. It's
Yeah,
going to
that is true. I work with them all the time because they come through the part of Auburn that I work in for their rotations, and they always tell me that they don't feel prepared. And that's not the school's fault. That's just because they lack the real world experience as a veterinarian and not a pre-vet student or vet tech, etc. So we'll all get through it together. It's not the end of the world. You mentioned the trade-offs. That
Mhm.
is true. There are very few people who I've met that are able to keep up 17 plus hour competitive course loads with a 4.0 and two jobs. I do
Yeah.
know people like that, and they're insane. I don't know how they do it. They're also some of the most lovely people that I know.
They're probably miserable. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
I
maybe
just
so. But once they
do
get into
that,
the
but
school,
it's true. I was at 21 credit hours this semester working a job. I decided to take fewer working hours. I've already applied, not just because of that, but because I was taking 21 credit hours. And you can get very sick in undergrad. Like I have been sick for months being so stressed. So learning to balance it all is another talent. I like you said, I meet very few who can do 18 plus working 20-hour weeks, plus having a life outside of it. Like I go and I see my horses in my free time, or I run the prefect, things like that. You have to find a balance.
yeah, I would say that my trade-off was definitely, I'm not saying that, I completely sacrificed academics, but I think I definitely put a personal emphasis on extracurriculars. And
Yeah.
I also love my job. So I did work a lot. And this semester I cut back on my work hours as well because I was in 19 hours of, OChem 2, biochemistry, all of it, all the good stuff. And I can say that it's okay to like trade off in a way that makes you feel happy. If you feel happier working on academics, but still maintaining a decent amount of hours, then that's great. If you feel happier
Yeah.
working on extracurriculars and work and just barely sacrificing that GPA, personally, I got into vet school with a 3.45, and I'm not embarrassed to say that. It's just a really good anecdote to
You
say
graduated early too.
I'm,
That's another
I
thing.
am graduating early. I'm graduating my undergraduate degree at an R1 STEM-based university 1 year early with a
Mhm.
minor, and I have a 3.45. I'm not embarrassed about it. Some people would be, but I don't regret anything that I did during my college experience. I don't regret having, a minute to hang out with my friends instead of study that extra hour when really it might have made a 2 point difference on that exam. I don't regret enjoying my life and getting an 89.3 in one of my classes that didn't get rounded. So it's just the way of the world. Do what makes you happy. And vet schools really want to see that you're well-rounded. You should never go all in on one aspect of your application. And I'm not an admissions expert, but I can tell you from the admissions boards that I've talked to and as somebody who's applied, that might be the worst thing that you can do is go 4.0 no hours or all hours 2.0. How
Exactly.
to have that balance.
It's changed a lot. The veterinary world has changed a lot. I think it used to be incredibly grade heavy, and now they're more so focusing on are you a human being and are you passionate and do you have emotional intelligence? It's one thing to be able to take a test, but it's another thing to be able to comfort people who are in the hardest part of their lives with their animals. You have to be able to do both. That's also a trade-off, right? There are very few people who are equally emotionally intelligent as they are scholastically intelligent. I love learning, but I excel in more of the animal related classes in the physiology chemistry is much harder for me, but other people do really well in chemistry. But maybe I can go and talk to an owner of a pet better than they could. So
Yeah.
it's right.
I think that's one amazing thing about this little shift that we are seeing towards holistic review processes and whatnot. Just as a whole, all of the vet schools say that they're trying to be more holistic. And just with the applicant pool, with 2,700 applicants, 83 to 100 seats, you have to be
Mhm.
selective. And so that does unfortunately mean GPA does matter, but they're looking at quality and quantity of your experience. I know that my quantity might not have been as much as anybody
I
else.
think,
It makes me feel like I'm saying, if I can do it, you can do it. Like, trust.
yeah. I
That's,
have like I applied with a 3.68 GPA.
yeah.
I wanted it to be higher, but like you said, there are trade-offs. And then my hours weren't as crazy. I had like 1,000 hours in that in small and large. So some people apply with like thousands of thousands of on hours. So I'm grateful. I'm just grateful for anything really.
No,
I
me
guess.
too. I was in the same boat. I applied with just under 1,000 hours, but if you keep in mind the fact that a lot of my work experience doesn't count as vet hours, it's animal experience.
Exactly.
And the
Hmm.
fact that I'm graduating early and didn't have a car freshman year, that only gave me 2 years of possible
Oh
experience.
yeah.
So, talking about the general admissions process, everybody, or maybe not everybody, if you're in high school or if you're still early in your undergrad, you might not know this. The general timeline is January, VMCAS, the central application service, other than the two Texas schools and a couple international schools, depending on what you're interested in, opens. And in May, you do what's called program selection, which is where you literally go through and select the individual schools you like to apply for, and you can start working on their supplemental application, essay questions or whatever they might require. And they recommend you to submit it 2 to 3 weeks before the deadline, which this year was September 16th.
Yeah.
Submitted mine in early August because I got to a point where I was like, I don't want to stress about it anymore. I want to turn it in and be done. There's nothing I can work on. All that being said, what was your specific personal journey through the admissions process? Do you have any tips, tricks, hardships? What happened?
Yes, of course. So looking back, I didn't do much as soon as it opened. I filled out my general information and then you have a quite a long pause until everything else opens. In May, around that time, early summer, I opened it up and I started looking on it and your experiences. So I had kept a spreadsheet of everything I had ever done, but taking the time to really elaborate on your experiences, I do suggest for every person to write pretty much to the max word count for almost everything. Even if you have to say that you've swept the room of the hospital, it's still something that you did. It's showing an accomplishment and time in the hospital. So gathering that list was more so what I did through the summer and then starting to fill that out. I really got most of the work done in my first few weeks back to school. I had everything gathered and outlined, but writing, I really do a lot better when I get to be in my functional space, which is my school library. We have multiple libraries, but being back in that environment, because I work 2 or 3 jobs in summer and I have a crazy household. So it's okay, people, if you sit down and write and edit it when you get back to school. The main work in the summer should be for you to have a lot of time for introspection. So I had a lot of long phone calls with friends, moms of my friends. I sent my drafts and I've completely redid them multiple times to 10 different people, my advisor, my professor I was talking about earlier who rescued us at the park, and every single word in that statement I have redone and thought about exactly why it was there.
I totally relate to that. I just happen to be, one of my better subjects has always been writing, English, whatnot. So I know that I started the minute that it opened. I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure I was at home on my Christmas break, and I think I literally opened it the day it opened because I never looked at it before. Which my piece of advice, I didn't know you could do this. I never thought about it.
Mhm.
If you are a junior and it's not your time to apply yet, you can still go into VMCAS and basically say that you're applying and go through and fill out the general information, the experiences, the resume stuff, all of that jargon that feels not as important when you're trying to work on your essays the next year that change year to year. Your experiences are going to be the same and you can add on to it, but you don't have to completely reinvent the wheel the next year.
No.
I think that that was something interesting. I had a friend tell me they did, and I was like, didn't know you could do that. That's another thing that will also show vet schools say that, oh, we have a projected applicant pool of 3,000 people this year. But when they say that before the submission deadline, a lot of that is those people that go in early. I didn't know that.
Mhm.
So if that makes you feel better statistically, that does lower the application pool a little bit. Anyway, I do think that I wrote that essay within the first 2 months, the
Mhm.
general why do you want to be a vet essay. I filled out as much experience as I could on and off throughout the semester. And in the summer is when, because, like I mentioned, May 9th is when those program selections opened. And that's when the real work started.
Oh,
Applying
yeah.
to so many schools means double the essays, triple, double, whatever number you want to use. I have a Google Doc that is 16 pages of only supplemental essays. That's it. Just the supplemental questions, essays, whatnot. I applied to 12 schools and I have 16 pages of 500-word essays or whatnot.
Yeah. I
Because
applied to 8 and I have so many pages. I also have essays at the bottom of it that I didn't use.
so I did the same thing. I completely redid my why do you want to be a vet essay
Yeah,
twice. I just completely
exactly.
scrapped it. I was like,
Mhm.
this doesn't feel right. I'm gonna scrap it. And I ended up starting mine with like 2 sentences of like an anecdote is what I'll call it. It
Mhm.
wasn't necessarily the moment that I felt like I wanted to be a vet because this is so cliche, but I always wanted to be a vet. What no, whatever. Everybody says that. Who cares? They don't want to hear that. They want to hear why you want to be a vet though, not when you wanted to be
Exactly.
a vet. So that was really hard for me, kind of putting together something that wasn't just, I love animals and I want to be a vet.
That's what I was mentioning with a lot of introspection. So it was hard for me to nail down a specific moment in my life where I realized, like, oh, that's it. Because there have been a million moments like that. And I always thought there would just be one huge one, and that's how everyone makes it out to be. No. So my essay, I wrote about it. It was like a journey through different areas in my life. So I opened up with when I was 14, I got horses at our generational farm, rescue horses, and cleaning out the barn that was filled with clutter by myself with my like scrawny little 14-year-old body. And then I went into getting my super arthritic horse. Someone gave him to me and rehabilitating him and learning about holistic medicine too, and my journey of saying yes to things and being brave. And that made me fall in love with learning and being able to help other animals and just that whole thing about expanding my worldview. So that was mainly what I spoke about. But it took a long time because, as we know, we could write like 10 different essays on why we want to be a vet, and they would all be good. But
Mhm.
trying to find the perfect set of words that exactly represent you as a person, that takes a lot of work. Please do not last minute that. You can maybe write it in the last few weeks, but have what you want to say like in your heart there. Make sure you know. And if you don't know fully where you want to go with it, just say what you'd like to contribute to the field. It's okay if you don't know exactly what you want to do in vet med. You shouldn't know, in my opinion, because you're going to close yourself off to a lot of great opportunities.
That is one thing that I always think about. People ask me back home, they're like, well, what are you going to do in vet? And I'm like, well, really, realistically, I'm very open-minded. If something
Yeah.
comes along and I'm on clinicals and pathology or something, and that really seems like what I want to do, I have no problem changing it. Right now, my interest is mixed animal, like we already spoke about, but I think that's an important thing to keep in mind throughout your entire pre-vet journey. Please be open-minded. I can't tell you how many times people have told me about the jobs that I've had. Oh, I would never do that. I would never do that. When really, there's some of the best jobs that I could have gotten in the area. I worked at the Swine Research and Educational Center in Auburn. One of my favorite jobs. Loved it. Loved it. Pay awful. But some of my favorite memories.
You got paid those.
Did
Good.
get paid. That is true. And
Uh-huh.
then, everybody was just like, oh, that's so nasty. Well, what do you think you're going to do in vet school, really?
Exactly.
And then same thing for now that I work at the necropsy unit, which is just autopsies, but for animals,
For cool.
everybody says, how do you do that? How do you do that? It's the same thing as an anatomy. It's actually better than an anatomy class when you're doing dissections. I've never quite understood closing myself off to such amazing opportunities and working with such great people. I think that talking about the essay is important. I had no idea what to write. I had random strangers on Facebook review mine. I had an English teacher from high school. I had this person, that person. As many people as would read it, I would send it to them and say, and including my supplemental questions, even though that was 16 pages and I didn't enforce that on as many people, I
Oh, yeah.
definitely sent that main essay to a lot of people.
Oh, definitely. I submitted everything, I think 3 weeks before the deadline. So I would have enough time, 2.5 weeks to 3 weeks before the deadline. Just so students know as well, you want to do that because if there's an issue, they can tell you. Because otherwise, if you submit it and there's an issue and then it's incomplete because it has to be verified, that means you're out of the running.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's why I did mention earlier you should submit it. I think they recommend 3 weeks before.
Yeah, at least 3 weeks before.
At least
Hmm.
3 weeks
Don't
before.
last minute this. This is the most important part ever. I know
Yes,
it's crazy, but it is.
these
Mhm.
schools have to judge you off of this 30-page packet that represents you as a person and your entire life experience, which is
Yeah.
really hard for them. So if
Mhm.
you don't give it the time and thought that it needs, they don't
Right.
get to see the full person that you are. It's
And
gonna
you're maybe not taking it seriously enough. Like you have to be comfortable with the uncomfortable because that's what
yeah.
vet school is.
I would 100% agree with that. I think in my essay, when I said I started with a personal anecdote, I worked at a Mexican restaurant for 4 years in high school, and I started with a little anecdote about some of my favorite customers there. And my why of wanting to be a vet is really outreach, client education, and community values in rural areas. I took a class called Rural Sociology at Auburn with an amazing professor, and it just 100% put all of my thoughts and feelings into a kind of palatable way to say what I wanted to do with my life. I think that applying that sociological aspect to my essay, which sounds more complicated than it is, all I was saying in my essay is that I wanted to go give back to my community, essentially. And I talked about the people that kind of raised me and why I wanted to go back and what the animals had to do with that.
Oh
And
yeah.
yeah, because it was a farming community, so it just made sense. I don't remember, it's been a minute since I've read that essay, but that's essentially what I based my essay off of, was that rural community development people aspect, not just I love animals. A lot
Exactly.
of my essay was stressing that I'm not doing this just for the animals, I'm doing it for the people and the people that I care so much about.
Oh, definitely. God, I mean, we can't have animals without people. We wouldn't have domesticated animals. And you have to love people too to be a vet. I mean, there are some instances where you can get away from it. A lot of pathologists are not the most. I work with pathologists too. I love it. Some don't want to be around all the customer relationship, which I understand. But for general practitioners, you have to be able to love people too.
Yes, I agree. And, you know, I think we should end this off with a couple points. To recap, we talked about our general experience, some of our favorite highs, lows, whatnot. We talked about our admissions process, both general and personal. And I would like to end that conversation by saying not our stats, not our GPA hours, none of that. But I would like to say, here's where we are in our process. For example, I applied to 12 schools. I have been accepted to two, interview alternate at one, waiting to hear back from four. And one of those I've already interviewed with. What about you?
I have been accepted to one so far. I have one alternate interview as well. It's funny, McCaelyn and I have the same one. And then I have another interview coming up, and I'm waiting to hear back from the rest. So I applied to 8. I've received one rejection, but that's okay. That's part of it. You only need one. right?
Yeah, no, for sure. I've received my more than my fair share of rejections. I actually didn't expect to get in this year at all. I did it kind of for the experience. I really thought that they were going to say, you need another year out in the real world. You're graduating early. I'm 20 years old, you know? I thought they would say no. And they didn't, and I just couldn't believe it. And like I said, my GPA is average to 3.45, and we don't have to go in any more into stats than that. All I'm going to say is if I can do it, you can do it. With somebody, as somebody with a lot of self-doubt in this whole entire process, the moment that you get that email, you're like, oh my God. And the other point I wanted to make with this is that it is January, or I'm sorry, December, and we still haven't heard back from a,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, like I got rejected from a lot in the beginning, but as far as like, I'm still waiting on 3 schools to let me know if I got an interview.
Exactly. Like we are still early in it. Wisconsin, I just submitted their supplemental. They had a late supplemental. The other one I'm supposed to hear by tomorrow, but historically they've also been late. So if you guys are waiting on answers right now, don't panic. It will be what it'll be. And I really would like for people to not get so fixated on stats and numbers. That's probably one of the biggest things I see on our Facebook group is that everyone's like, give me your stats, give me your thing. Well, the numbers in front of you are not your entire story. Like the stats do not show their essays, they do not show their interviews, they do not show exactly who those people are. If you genuinely want to be there and you are working for it, you will get there. It
I,
doesn't matter how much time. Mhm.
yes, I think that the LMU interview, she mentioned they want to see that you have the grit and that you've been
Yeah.
in the trenches. I thought that was a great way to phrase it. I know somebody that has 10 times better stats than I do, and she's on her second application and she's been denied from every single school she's applied to. And that's not to hate on her. It's just a very different experience.
Yeah.
Don't know what makes our applications different. I'll never know. But the vet schools know what they're looking for, and all you have to do is be yourself. Don't try to fit what you think, oh, this person or this school wants this specific person. Don't do that. You'll fit in where you're going to fit in.
Now
And
you're good. Be yourself and keep an open mind. What I ran on to be president for the election was that I wanted to expand opportunities for you. And that's why we're talking tonight with McCaelyn on what we can do. So if there's anything besides just our wonderful monthly webinars, our incredible interview series, any scholarship resources we've sent out, if you guys have ideas for us to, please reach out. We are here for you. And if you want to know our stats, go ahead and email us. We will let you know. That's not a problem as well. But like we said, don't fixate on it. And if anything, try to learn from a bunch of people and a lot of vets and just say yes. That's been my thing this year. I've had the year of yes, and it's gotten me very far.
yeah, I think that's kind of what you have to do. It's hard to say no anyway, but always say yes if you can.
Yeah.
And and we have scholarship opportunities coming up, and you'll be able to apply for those. Watch out on all of our platforms for that, on announcements. You do not have to attend symposium to receive a scholarship. And I hope to see you at symposium. And to round off our little interview, I want to do something a little bit more fun, and we're going to do a couple rapid fire questions. So, Gretel, if you could only work with one species for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Oh, equine. Equine.
Easy. I think I knew your answer to that one. I would say mine
Yeah.
would be, oh, that's really hard actually.
Yeah.
Maybe cattle. And I
Yeah.
used to hate cows, but maybe cattle. All right. Most embarrassing moment in a clinic.
One time I was shadowing for the large animal medicine and a towel dropped on the ground and I picked it up and I put it back on the surgical table and the surgeon turned to me and he goes, you just ruined my sterile field. And I froze. I felt like I was going to cry. It was just one of those things you don't think about. Oh, I'm going to be helpful and pick that back up for him. No, let it drop to the ground. That was my most embarrassing moment. I was a freshman in undergrad, and that man still scares me. So,
I would say mine, I had two very similar incidents when I was 14 volunteering at, that mixed animal practice. I let a bull go
oh,
across the street. in like a not quite residential area, but definitely shouldn't have been out. And then I also got insane rope burn that I still have scars from holding a nylon lead rope on a stud. So don't do that. Always let go. Always let go.
It's not worth it.
No, it's never worth it. God, what's the weirdest snack you've eaten during a late night study session?
Ooh, let's see. I have a lot of like girl dinners, like ramen and like Reese's peanut butter cups. That's pretty much my norm because I'm a horrible cook, so I eat odd things all the time. Goat cheese and crackers, and then some crazy thing that I baked because I also bake a lot, and I have a lot of failures in baking, so something burned.
I would say I don't think I have a lot of crazy ones, but this past semester for my animal nutrition and metabolism final, I pulled an almost all-nighter, which don't do that. But anyway, I think I had maybe three triple shots of like the canned Starbucks drinks and then like cookie dough
Mhm.
for like a
Oh yeah.
12-hour library shift. Okay, what's the funniest name you've heard for a pet?
Oh, I gotta think about that. It was like Mr. Kitty, King of the Universe, or Dingus was another one, which is like
That's
not a good one.
That's really funny because I actually had one a couple weeks ago named Dingus. I was like, oh, I think my favorite, I didn't even like meet in a clinic environment, but it's my friend's great grandma's pets were Stupid, Trouble, and Angel. So
Yeah,
I thought that was a great pairing. Okay, what's the most unexpected thing you've been asked to do in a clinic or farm?
let's see. I've had to run around the hospital and find my boss's coffee cup. It took me like 30 minutes. And it turns out she had left it like right near her desk.
I think that mine would be literally anything that I've had to do at the swine unit or the necropsy unit, because how often do you hear, oh, use the hoist and get that horse out here on the table?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, never
Clean.
thought that I'd be hearing that. Or go sharpen your knife.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, whatever.
Sterilizing anything in equine theory looks like medieval torture devices.
That too.
Clean
Yeah.
those.
Oh my goodness.
The giant chains and the speculums I've had to clean. Uh,
Oh,
those are really funny. See, I've had like giant bags when we're doing uterine lavages explode on me.
oh.
Yeah, that's a smell you'll never forget. And my roommates will never forget because I had to come home like that.
Yeah, I bet my roommates freshman year hated me when I worked at the swine unit. That sticks. And thank God we change out of our clothes for pathology because I don't know what I would do. I've had my fair share of colons and rumens explode on me. So I get that. That's not fun. Okay. If animals could talk, who do you think would be the sassiest?
Oh my God. My rabbit Millie.
Yeah, I think that either mine or my roommate's cat is pretty sassy. Cats are pretty sassy. Just
Really
with speaking, they're pretty sassy. Other than that, I would say honestly maybe like a giraffe. They seem like a little sassy
they
moment.
do seem sassy. They a mare like so much. I wish I knew what their thoughts were.
Okay, and last question, would you rather clean dog kennels or shovel horse stalls all day?
Horse stalls. I enjoy mucking stalls. If I have headphones, I can go for hours. If you guys ever have like a bad mental health day, go muck stalls.
Yeah, you can really think. I think that I didn't even think about it when I wrote that question, but if I wasn't doing horse stalls, I would say 100% going back to that swine unit and power washing all of the barns in a
So
biosphere unit.
so
That
satisfying. Just it's great. I don't like having to be on my hands and knees and pull out dirty pads. I'd rather muck 12 stalls.
arguably the ammonia and the smell from the dog kennels is worse than the swine
I
unit.
think so too. I think so too. I don't think large animal smell is bad.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Gretel. I can't wait to get this up and running for our members. And members, if you have any questions, please email either of us. Always have a backup plan for shadowing hours and embrace every learning opportunity. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your other pre-vet friends. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.